Hi everyone, this is Jason and welcome back to the channel. Today my guest is Scott Augustine, Vice President of Operations for Rokfin.com. But before we begin, please take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Everyone, thanks for coming back to the channel. Joining me today is Scott Augustine. He's the VP of Operations with Rokfin. He's also the co-author of the RAE token white paper. Scott, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So my first question, and this is a question I ask just about everybody, is how did you first get into crypto?
Yeah, my story is a little bit different than I would say most people. Maybe similar to some, but different to a lot of others. My background was I was studying finance at the University of Notre Dame, and during that time, I just dove straight into game theory and became a very successful online poker player, believe it or not. And over the next 10 years or so, I pursued that path after graduating. And there was a lot of bumps in the road of that industry. And the biggest one kind of inadvertently led me to crypto. And that was the idea of trust, but don't trust, verify. And what had happened was, unfortunately, hard lesson to learn, there was a company that stole $300 million of poker players' assets. And no one knew it until the government seized their website and people came in saying, okay, go ahead, pay them back. And they said, actually, we don't have any of the money. And I had a substantial amount of money there that they told me I had. I trusted them, and I couldn't, though, verify it. And fast forward a few years later, a neighbor of mine, while I was living abroad in Prague, bought some Bitcoin, starts telling me about it. Initially, naturally, I tell him that's a stupid idea. And then after a couple more times and conversations, I go down the path with him, and I'm still down that rabbit hole today.
All right. Yeah. Wow. Oh, offline, you have to tell me that story about that gambling site.
In the poker world, it was absolutely huge. It'd be as if like Bitfinex had stolen it, or financing crypto. It was that scale. They had 30% of the world market share, more or less. It was called full tilt poker, and it was people can look it up. This was 2011. The process was called Black Friday.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
it would be like the online poker version of Mt. Gox.
Yeah, very similar. That's a good analogy.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay, I never heard of that. So being how that got you into crypto, Bitcoin, when you came into Rokfin and you wanted to come up with the white paper, what was the original idea behind the RAE token? Like, why a token instead of just funding the company normally?
Well, we do fund our company through the traditional rounds of VC rounds. We actually don't use the RAE token for fundraising. That's a big key decision we made. We said we looked at a lot of these projects, and the ICO model just didn't make sense to us. We looked at all these different projects at the time, raising hundreds of millions of dollars, getting it all up front, and us realizing that didn't really align with how you really maintain a sustainable business entity. And Martin, who is the CEO for Rokfin, he had previously started Flow Sports. I know he's been on your show before. For 12 years, and he went out and raised 40-some million of capital for that company. And we decided we don't need that token to be a fundraising mechanism. We need that token to solve this real world problem. And that was what he was seeing. And that's when him and I met after he left Flow Sports. And we met for coffee a few times, started riffing on an idea of, well, how would this look like if we used a token? Not with the idea of let's start with blockchain, Bitcoin's cool. I already love Bitcoin. I was already headfirst in, but saying, what could this token do to solve this game theory problem? And that's what the white paper really dives into. And it's all about how creators are leveraged by the very networks that they themselves are the foundation of.
Well, that's one thing that I liked about what you guys were doing and talking to Martin. The website isn't structured to promote blockchain and cryptocurrency. It's a streaming service. And like I told Martin, I had to look to find that this was blockchain related. It was so far down in the bottom of the site, you had to actually dig for it. And I told Martin that that's actually where these sites should be going. You should never know that you're on a blockchain, right? You should never know that a crypto of any sort was involved in the creation of this website, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right. That's how we that's the premise we started with, was this is a tool we're using to solve a problem, just as we're using a lot of other tools in our company right now that isn't uh, realizable to the end user. The end user who's coming on and wanting to watch your content, wanting to watch a Ben Askren and a Jordan Burroughs on our website, they don't necessarily care about cryptocurrency, nor should they have to enjoy that content. Yet the creators are really going to care for it because that utility comes in through that token, offering them way higher value for the subscription than they're used to from the current systems.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I think we spend too much time talking about the cryptocurrency aspect of this technology, and not enough time talking about what you can do with the technology. And then at the same line, and at the same time, we're talking too much about how much it's worth, as opposed to can people use it to buy goods and services, right? Like, essentially, I could use the RAE token to buy something if I wanted to, and if somebody would accept it. But it makes no difference to Rokfin if I do that.
Right, right. Yeah, it's just a better means of rewarding value in the network that we described in this white paper and we deployed 4 months ago. It's just a better model for creators to earn their full value there. That isn't necessarily we need to be able to buy a cup of coffee with every cryptocurrency. And I think that's why you're seeing a large push in the narrative right now to DeFi and all these different avenues that are more financially first products, because that's how people have been talking about cryptos for the last 4 or 5 years. And now they're finding those use cases are strong, but they're not the only use cases that we're seeing.
Right. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So because like I said when we first spoke about, not I don't care about Lambos and going to the moon and all that stuff. That really makes no difference to me. What matters to me is that, can this be used? Can it be accepted? And then also, on a technology side, does it work in a way where this is a viable alternative to what's already out there?
Yeah, yeah. There does need to be some value to the cryptocurrency, just in probably some sort of floor value to prevent incentives from becoming misaligned with a lot of uh, the worries you saw when the prices were crashing during this last bear market, of people worrying about Bitcoin going into some sort of downward spiral, all of these different narratives coming around. There is some sort of psychological element there, as well as a real tangible incentive alignment that needs to happen. But I do agree that there needs to be a lot more focused on the utility of the technology, rather than, hey, what's the newest thing to get rich off of? Let's trade it in a casino-like environment. I think it just shows how young the industry was, and it's still, right? I read a very interesting take talking about the early days of the internet coming out for the commercial side, was just trying to overlay the old world onto the new, trying to be barnesandnoble.com rather than Amazon.
Right.
And we didn't know that Amazon was a thing until it became a thing. And we're still trying to figure out what the things are for cryptocurrency. And that's why we didn't necessarily just automatically go in line with everyone else and do an ICO and do all of these different pattern matching ideas. We really started from the ground up, being how would we want to align our network? And that's where we ended up here today.
Right. And again, that's one reason why I really like what you guys are doing over there, is that was the focus on this whole endeavor to begin with. Like you mentioned ICOs, and it makes me remember, what was it, late 2016, early 2017, when companies were just throwing blockchain in their title.
Hmm.
in order to seem like they were a part of this space, and it got ridiculous, you know. And so now we have companies like Rokfin who are just, we're a video streaming service. You can upload content. Hey, if you're a creator, you can get this.
Yeah, and there is going to be a lot of value captured there in our token for sure. But the idea there is that the value is actually just the value off of media a media network's value, not the value of people trying to trick other people into buying their token after they ICO for a higher price. Instead, this is an actual value capture mechanism that if it catches fire and it works well, it will be worth a lot of value, but it's actually fundamentally linked to the value of the network and not just some marketing material and a glossy white paper.
Right, and that's very important when you consider that, you know, if you get into it for the right reasons, you're likely to stay and not run into the hurdles that a lot of these other companies have up until this point.
Well, right, and you've seen, if you look at almost every graph of how these tokens tracked, it's ICO shoot up and then crash down, and then someone's left there all trying to pick up the pieces of people who bought in on the way down, thinking it'll go back up. And you saw that with pretty much every graph you see outside of a few of the major ones.
Just gets out of hand.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword there. The ease of creating a token and the ease of getting people excited about an idea is awesome, and it's great to get people excited about monetizing open source type of values. But at the end of the day, that's not something that's going to attract only the most honest people. There's going to be a lot of greed that comes through, and I think we already saw that.
I want to ask you a question about regulation. So in the digital space, streaming, for example, you have regulation about the kind of things you can post and the kind of people you can allow to use your services based on where they are versus where you are. But because we're dealing to a point with crypto, you have that financial regulation that could potentially be an issue also. Have you guys ever had a discussion about that over there? Have you thought that maybe this may become an issue for us down the line?
I think what I've seen in this space, especially after spending way too much time and money through Rokfin on getting legal consultation around these issues, due to just the new nature of the technology, the industry, and a lot of that price run up did leave retail consumers open to being manipulated, and I think they need to be protected as best we can with those regulations. I think so far it's gone okay. I would like a lot more clarity on the regulations, because even till now we feel really good about how our project is, and then when we look at some of these other projects that we think may or may not be in line with what's been purported in the regulations through the regulators, they seem to be completely okay. And I would have thought those projects would have been against what the regulators are saying. And so just more and more clarity would be great. But listen, like it's so early right now. I think they're really biding their time on the regulation side. They don't want to make a mistake and swing an axe when they should have used a scalpel there. You know, like they need to make sure that there's a real danger here that you could snuff out innovation. And you're seeing that narrative come out around the Kin and Kick lawsuit. They just filed a couple days ago like a really aggressive response to the SEC. We'll see where it goes. But some of those executives and companies are moving outside of the US's jurisdiction just to be safe, because they view it as, well, we don't want to be at the forefront of it like Kin and Kick are right now.
Right. Well, you know, that's one reason that Libra is in Switzerland as opposed to New York, for example.
Yeah. I mean, Libra, I think, is just pouring a ton of gasoline on the regulation fire right now. I think regulators were hoping that there'd be a bit more time for them to look at things and dissect things in the industry. But when Facebook comes in with 2 billion active users, and they're telling everyone we're going to pair with these other companies and create a non-sovereign currency that could rival the dollar, everyone comes to attention very quickly. I think within like 3 days there was a hearing. So that's something that we're going to get a lot of clarity on. We wrote a little bit about, I think Martin had an op-ed about how there's a real danger here that the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater, though. That cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin get lumped in with Libra, and just because people don't like Facebook, then all the cryptocurrencies also get lumped in with the harsh regulations that may or may not come down on Libra. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, and that's the other thing about, what I think caused the issue with Libra was it scared a lot of people when Facebook first said this is what we're doing, because like you said, over 2 billion users, that's a lot of people switching from potentially USD to Libra, right? And if I was a politician or a bank executive especially, I would say, no, we're shutting that down right now, right? But what I think they're missing the point, though, from a political standpoint, is that, crypto isn't just about the money. People use this in other parts of the world where they don't have access to a bank. They don't have access to the resources in order to buy goods and services as freely as you or I. And I think that's one thing that these politicians are missing the point with.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it was Laura Shin's podcast Unchained, if I'm not mistaken. I was listening to a crypto guy he was living in the Philippines, and he listed a stat that was kind of mind-blowing, that over the last 20 years, their currency had debased versus the dollar by 50%. So you could be a citizen in the Philippines doing a great savings job, putting more and more cash in the bank, and actually your purchasing power is less after that time. And you just don't have any options there. There's all these ideas that lower income people are kept in trading in currency and not in capital accruing assets. And that's the shift that crypto really is shaking things up. You're able to get a little bit more of a capital asset with it by dividing it in pieces through cryptocurrencies, such as we've seen with some of the real estate ideas with security tokens and Bitcoin itself. You could make that argument. And yeah, it's gonna be, people in the developed world in the US might be like, oh, I don't see a point of it. If you're in the Philippines, you're gonna really wake up to that idea. And you're gonna say, wait a minute, that's not going down. My money is going down, I'm switching. And we could see that in a lot of different places.
Well, it makes me remember a conversation I had with Michelle Mafra. She's Mama Crypto. She's based out of Brazil. Well, she's here now, but she's originally from Brazil, so her content is English and Portuguese. And she was telling me about South America and Latin America is that they're driving straight into crypto because of the volatility in their fiat markets, especially places like Venezuela, where we all know that their economy basically tanked over the last few years. So people have been turning to other means of, getting funds, getting money, right? And recently we hear that Iran, people over there are starting to mine Bitcoin because it's a way to get around the sanctions. It's a way to we never want to condone any type of rogue element, but the people need to eat, right? And so if they can use this as a means to buy bread, buy gas for their car, I don't see the problem with that. And I think that's one of the things that we as a space should be supporting. But our view of it, and this is my personal opinion, is that a lot of the conversation that we as a general space have around crypto is very first world. It's very, we can talk about this magical internet money because I can still go use my credit card. So, if it's great that it works, but if it doesn't work, I still have a way to live my life. Where in other countries where you don't have that other way, you need this to work.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of the talk about Venezuela and everything happening down there, which is obviously really like just terrible for the general population that they're dealing with it. But it's even more subtle than that too, where like you said in Argentina or different Latin American countries, where just like the Philippines example, where people are just subtly feeling it. It's not this giant shock, everything's on the news and it's a major crisis. It's just every day you subtly feel like I'm just working a little bit harder for a little less, and I don't understand why. And it's through this debasement of the currency in a lot of these countries. And so that's the part that I think if you're in a different country and that's a real issue for you, then that is just such a game changer. Now, who knows what that means for the world in general, but just that pivotal idea that you could allow people to opt out of a system that's pushing against their wealth creation on an individual basis is just amazing.
Right. Well, and then you also have we're moving into the next phase of cryptocurrency where it's like SMS text. Like there's services that allow you to send crypto that way, and even now there's one that you can send it via a person's Twitter tag, and instead of having to send a long string of wallet address, right? EOS is like that, where you can send it to a name instead of to an address. I think that method moving forward is what's going to benefit those regions, because I think we take for granted our access to smartphones and iPads and devices like that, whereas some people the most they have is a flip phone that just receives text messages. So if they can get access to crypto that way, then that will and they can use it that way. That will actually drive the adoption of this technology further than just sitting around, posting memes with Lambos. And I'm guilty of that. I'll be the first to admit I'm guilty of that. I love me a good meme.
I think there is something powerful you're seeing though in memes. I've thought about this a lot, where like people will make fun of memes and obviously they're silly a lot of the time or just downright ridiculous. But there are these memes. I remember particularly when Bitcoin crossed 9,000 and my Twitter feed fills up with the Dragon Ball Z meme of it. It's like that. Now people are, it's almost like this advertising that becomes this social excitement mechanism as well, where everyone's like, not only am I sharing this, so that's advertising, people click in, but I'm also getting you emotionally invested in it by saying, we all care about this joke, this meme, you should too. And now you feel like you're in. Now you feel like, now when I see that the next time, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've held below 9,000. When it came back, they were waiting for that meme. And now that ripple effect just keeps going through. So I do think there's a lot of power to memes that we might not even understand just because humans are complicated.
Right. Well, you know what? Every culture and every community, and crypto is a community. And whether we fight like cats and dogs sometimes, but we are a community. And you have your way of conveying emotion. And you have to remember, and what people need to remember is that by and large, we interact with each other solely online, right? Very, very, you do have local meetups, but by and large, like you're in Austin, I'm in Los Angeles, and this is how we're talking. So we can't always talk like this. But if something happens in the news and I put up a meme of Bitcoin on a rocket ship, you automatically know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Right? We don't have to get on a web chat. I don't have to text you or anything like that. Okay. Obviously Bitcoin's going up because Jason wouldn't have done that. right?
Right.
And it's just, I think the memes are our way of communicating, to your point, communicating the emotion that we feel in this space in a way that most people understand. You know, it's not hard to understand that.
Yeah. One of the earliest interactions I had with really the power of memes was during that first run up, the big run up from like a few $100 up, all the way up to 20,000 or so, was which direction the Bitcoin guy on the roller coaster was going that day on Reddit, right? He's just like, which way is he going? What are we doing? And, hey, we're going up. That's good. Down. Oh, this sucks. You know.
Or the one where the guy is the Bitcoin's on the ground and he's poking it with a stick.
Yeah.
Right? Come on, do something. All right, my
I
favorite.
mean, if you look at Dogecoin, like it's just a meme, right? That's its entire value, and yet it's still being kept alive by people just because they're holding on to that idea collectively, and they see value in that idea.
Well, yeah, and what I also like about Doge is that's a perfect example of anybody can make a cryptocurrency. You know, this isn't something that only a select few get to do. Anybody can do it. You know, you
Yeah,
just
it's definitely easier today than it used to be.
yeah.
The ability for companies to bootstrap a cryptocurrency on the technical components is fairly easy now, more or less. But the real challenge is all the other parts, the aligning the economics incentives, making sure that your network's not open to manipulation by outside sources, making sure that just every sort of single thing you can think of that people might try to do, they're going to try to do. And you need to be ready for that, or at least have a contingency plan. And that's something we think about all the time, which is just like, well, if I was going to try to manipulate this, how would I do it? And okay, let's go and put these processes in place, these check marks, and we'll go from there.
Right, right. That's a great point. Very, very, very good point. I wanted to ask you as we're finishing up. What's the timetable for the rollout of Rokfin? Are we going to see a 2019 open where anyone can sign up, or are we going to keep it the way it is, where you apply and then you get approved?
Yeah, so right now there's an application process. People can email creators at Rokfin, ROKFIN.com. That was deliberate in the sense that we're doing a closed alpha. We're trying to, as I was just referencing, if we just opened up everything and there's all sorts of manipulation in the network, it's much harder to parse out how this is happening. Whereas as we keep the network a little bit more selective at the start, we're able to iron out a lot of those problems before they start. And that's the whole idea behind being a closed alpha, because we're also not only doing a cryptocurrency concern there, but also a concern of just content creation networks. It's a dual-sided market, like figuring out how to bring customers in and creators in and the vice versa. That whole business is happening as well. So just to make sure that we are not biting off more than we can chew, we started in a closed alpha about 4 months ago. And going forward, we have plans in the short to midterm to roll out into a more of a closed beta and then an open beta. But we haven't publicly released those dates yet because we're also trying to make sure that just as everything I just referenced, we're just making sure we've got all of our ducks in a row before we really open up the platform and see what it can do.
Right. Well, and also you want to make sure that you have quality content on there. I mean, YouTube took a long time to get to the YouTube we know today. That didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
That I think people take for granted the quality of content that is currently on YouTube versus what we all saw when we first signed up for YouTube 10 years ago.
Yeah, you can actually look at. I did a dive one night on the Wayback Machine with YouTube and just seeing its progression. And as you referenced, the early videos and categories make no sense whatsoever. It's a wild collection of things people thought might be on the internet. I'll throw it on there as almost like a joke. And it was almost like a different version of eBonds World or something. And from there, it's progressed to some reports to a $200 billion company. And that change did not happen overnight. And we don't want to expect that we know exactly what we're doing from day one, but we also want to make sure that we are driving towards that success, because that's a competitor. You know, we're competing for content creators to put their stuff on Rokfin, and they're free. Creators on Rokfin can host their content anywhere they want. They're free to do that. But us using a premium subscription model rather than ad-based means that if you're hosting at other places, they probably won't pay for it on Rokfin. You can still host it on our site, but if you're going to look for to earn RAE and get those rewards for those subscribers, you're going to want to make it premium, and that won't work with YouTube's model. So it's a different approach. We think more sustainable. We think a better long-term approach is a subscription model, and that's why we went with it. If you look at, say, Steam and Steemit, they had all sorts of hurdles trying to figure out how to monetize and capture value to their token. And just 6 months ago, they just said, oh, we're just going to start experimenting with ads. Well, that if it wasn't baked in, it's going to be really hard to slap that on now when you're dealing with these cryptocurrencies. Starting from the start with a subscription model baked into the whole mechanics of our token, I think is what sets us apart from a lot of other projects as well.
If anyone wanted to find you on social media, how would they do that?
Yeah, so you can follow our social channels, which are at the Rokfin on Twitter and at RAE Token, RAETOKEN. We can also jump in our Telegram, which is RAE Token, and all the information about the RAE Token itself is at raetoken.org, RAETOKEN, and Rokfin is rokfin.com, ROKFIN.com. Yeah, you can find it there. My personal handles _ Scott Augustine on Twitter. You just found me on there, picked up one follower out of you. So one at a time, good for me. And yeah, we'll reach out. We're excited about this. You know, if you're a crypto enthusiast or you're a creator, we need everyone involved in here because we think it's really powerful.
All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. Everyone, be sure to check out Rokfin and also the RAE token. I'm going to put links in the description below, what Scott just mentioned, and check them out. All right, Scott, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.